Hello and welcome back to Lorcana Villain. My name is Baker and today we'll be reviewing every single Amber card from the upcoming set Shimmering Skies. Normally I review new cards as they're being revealed, but I ended up leaving it super late this set and it got to a point where I decided we'd just wait for the entire set to be out and then I would review each ink combination at a time, which is quite interesting because sometimes there are cards that synergize with each other. I haven't actually done it that way since set 1 and some people may end up actually preferring that. So yeah, there's going to be 6 videos hopefully across the course of this week looking at all the different inks. The last of the cards were revealed about half an hour ago in the Lorcana Discord. So yeah, we're basically going to jump right in. My apologies for the lack of content over the last week. It's been a really weird couple of weeks, which I will talk about at some point, probably not until next week because I want to get all these videos out. I want to cover the rest of the set championship deck lists, and then I'm going to be casting in Italy this weekend, which I'm super excited for. So yeah, probably some point next week I'll do a little admin life update video, but for now I want to get stuck into these card reviews. A shout out to the channel sponsor Cardmarket. If you're looking for Lorcana singles at competitive rates, please check out Cardmarket. Also, I apologise if I'm super red in the face. It's like 9 o'clock in the evening and it's absolutely boiling. I've got my fan on me, which I'll hopefully be able to edit that out. Hopefully you won't be able to hear it too predominantly, but nonetheless, let's jump right in and look at the Amber cards from Shimmering Skies. Alright, we're going to be looking at the set courtesy of Mushu Report. A huge shout out to them for being a fantastic source of Lorcana information. And we're going to start off with Koda, Talkative Cub, 2-cost inkable, 2/1, quest for 2, and tell everybody during opponents' turns you can't lose lore. So the introduction of Brother Bear, full disclaimer, I never actually saw Brother Bear. It was one Disney film that we never had when I was growing up. I had a lot of Disney videotapes growing up, I've mentioned before, but Brother Bear was not one that I ever had, so I've not seen this, so I'm sure I will have to rectify that at some point. I saw a lot of people really hyped for Brother Bear to be entering Lorcana. And yeah, an interesting effect. Obviously, this is going to prevent things like Pirate's Life, which doesn't see play. Aladdin doesn't see play anymore. The Heroic Outlaw from first chapter. There's Lyle Tiberius Rourke. But yeah, not a ton of cards that are relevant in meta that steal lore from the opponent. I think there are a couple of cards in this set that do that. Obviously, I'm still getting familiar with set 5. But yeah, at the moment, this effect isn't hugely relevant. But Koda is also worth talking about in combination with Kenai. I'm assuming this is pronounced Big Brother. Super cute artwork. 2-cost inkable, 1/4, quest for 1, and Brothers Forever. While this character is exerted, your character's named Koda can't be challenged. So that's interesting. Koda, obviously, questing for 2 is pretty cool. It's 2-cost along with Kenai. So yeah, you could absolutely play Kenai for... Well, really, you'd want to put them both down the same... You could put them both down on turn 4 and then turn 5 quest with both, and then Kenai is protecting him, but I would just rather use a bodyguard. So I don't think these cards are particularly overwhelming, but they are very likely to be shift targets for bigger versions at some point. Next up, we got Rut, Northern Moose, who I'm guessing is also Brother Bear. 4-cost inkable, 3/4, quest for 1, and support. Nothing too much to say here. Again, support is an interesting keyword for a couple of cards like Dragon Gem, and there's a location in one of the inks in set 5 that gives buffs to support characters. And yeah, it's one of our better stat lines for the 4-cost slot in Amber, but again, nothing particularly interesting. Next up, some more Wreck-It Ralph. We've got Vanellope von Schweetz, 1-cost inkable, 2/2, quest for 1. So yeah, nothing much to say here, but we do have a couple of other Vanellopes, one of them being a Floodborn, so this is more often than not going to be our preferred shift target. Before we look at the Floodborn, we will look at the other non-Floodborn. It was a 2-cost inkable, 2/2, quest for 1, and pay to play. Whenever this character quests, chosen opposing character gets -1 strength this turn, which is a perfectly fine ability. But if the Floodborn is worth playing, I think we would normally just play the 4 copies of the 1-drop. But maybe you play this as just an additional shift target. I mean, the ability can be interesting for getting things into range for things like Brawl, Under the Sea. We've seen like just the simplicity of what Ice Block can provide for a format. So it's not an irrelevant ability, but it's nothing out of this world, and yeah, you would probably just play the 1-drop more often than not. And jumping to the Floodborn, here she is, the Sugar Rush Princess, 4-cost inkable, 2/4, quest for 2. She's a shift 2 character, so we can play this on turn 2 onto our 1-drop. And I hereby decree, whenever you play another princess character, all opposing characters get -1 strength until the start of your next turn. So an okay ability, especially in the fact that the reduction lasts until the start of your next turn. There's not a lot of damage, strength reducing abilities where it lasts that long. There are others, but it's rarer. Also nice that you could do this multiple times because it's whenever you play another princess, so we could potentially do this a few times to get things into range of things I just mentioned, like Under the Sea and Brawl, stuff like that. So it's an okay ability. I think she is just far outshined by the Queen, unfortunately. The 1-drop into the 5-drop, who's also a shift 2, whose ability is much, much better. If you were going to build a princess deck, then absolutely you could have some fun with this, and depending on your ink, because you might combine with Ruby for the Brawl or Emerald for the Under the Sea, and there's other things that care about you having specific strength. So yeah, in a princess deck, if that ever gets good enough, maybe this is your preference, but I think 9 times out of 10 currently you would go with the Queen, unless the racer keyword ends up being really relevant, which I don't think it's that relevant in this set. We do get a lot, well, this is us getting the racer keyword, but I don't think there's anything that's too out of this world. But in the future it could be better, and then maybe that's a reason to play this over the Queen. But cool card. Sticking with the Wreck-It Ralph theme, I'm a big fan of this film. We have Fix-It Felix Jr., Trusty Builder, 3-cost Ingable, 2/4, Quest for 1, and Bodyguard. This pretty standard 3-cost Bodyguard character. Having that sort of stat line is perfectly fine. But we have 2 other Fix-It Felix Juniors, one of them being a Floodborn, but the other one being this 2-cost Ingable, 1/3, Quest for 1. And oh my land, when you play this character, if you have a location in play, draw a card. I think this is super good. Because there are a few locations that only cost 1. Specifically in Amber, we have Atlantica, which characters there get +2 to their singing cost, and Neverland, which is just a 1/4 that gains 1 lore. And there are other 1-drop locations in other colours, depending on what you're combining with this with. But yeah, it's not always going to be preferable in meta to be playing a location on turn 1, but a location into this isn't an awful play, and immediately getting to tutor a card essentially. But to move on to our Floodborn, who is the Niceland Steward, 5-cost Inkable, 4/5, Quest for 1, Shift 3, and Building Together. Your locations get +2 willpower. So love this theming of Fix-It Felix being synergy for locations. Makes all of the sense. So yeah, for a start, this is a shift line to sing those 5-cost songs early. This is in Amber, which is very commonly paired with Steel. So if you want an early way to sing, you grab your swords, your Whole New World, your Long Came Zeus's. This is another way of doing that. You can play the 2-drop Fix-It Felix and then this on turn 3. So that in itself is not terrible to have. And yeah, the +2 to locations, if you do take that curve as I just suggested, like the 1-drop into the Fix-It Felix to draw a card into this, and then giving that location an extra 2 willpower, depending on how much pressure that location has been putting on from the beginning. Maybe they've been challenging it like from straight away, and maybe you can put down this Fix-It Felix Jr., take out whatever's exerted, and then your location is surviving that bit longer. I'm not convinced we have enough good 1-cost locations that really fit this, other than the Hidden Cove is probably the most interesting, especially because once you move Fix-It Felix there, then he becomes a 5/6. Yeah, I think Fix-It Felix Jr. is okay. This Floodborn does interest me to a degree, and I like the fact that the 2-cost is pretty good, but it's whether or not we find a deck that it's good enough that is happy to play a location on turn 1, and if this curve is then strong enough. I think it's alright, it's certainly interesting. Next up we've got Gazelle Popstar. I'm not sure if that's even her real name because I'm looking at a version from in a different language. I'm not even sure what she's from. Is it Zootopia? Nonetheless, 3-cost Inkable, 2/3, Quest for 2, and Singer 5. So she's Ariel without the search, but also questing for 1 more. So yeah, not irrelevant. We have things like Gaston that we got in Rise of the Floodborn, who is 3-cost Inkable, 3/3, Quest for 1 with Singer 5. So obviously the fact that we've got 2 strength, you've always got to fear things like Brawl. But the fact that she quests for 2, maybe you want that bit more aggression. Again, a lot of these Steel Song decks are running multiple copies of Singers. Like you see in 4 Ariel, 4, like in a lot of instances 4 Ursula. And then I've even seen a couple of copies of Gaston, just so that you've always, like, so that you consistently have these cheap singers on board that can sing your Wheels, your Grab Your Sword, your Zeus's, things like that. So it's just going to depend on whether you prioritize having the extra strength on something like a Gaston so it doesn't fall to Brawl, or if you're going to prioritize having the extra lore. So yeah, I wouldn't write it off. Next up, we've got Kristoff, Reindeer Keeper, 9 cost, uninkable, 3/7, quest for 3. And 2 abilities. We've got Bodyguard and we've got Song of the Herd. For each song card in your discard, you pay 1 less ink to play this character. So we've got a lot more of these cards that have ways to reduce their cost in this set. I was fortunate enough to reveal Gaston, who has a very similar effect. And we've seen effects like this before. We have Chernabog, who is also in Amber, also a 9 cost. Basically the same ability, except for he is the amount of characters in your discard. But he also funnels those characters back into your discard. So this is for songs. So theoretically, songs are kind of easier to get into your discard earlier, just because they go straight to the discard. Obviously, when you play a character, it goes to the board. And if you're removing your own characters, that's obviously not always productive. Maybe it's because you're trading with your opponent. I just think it's easier to get songs into the discard. And if you can keep it up and be able to play songs turn after turn, like after a Cinderella Ballroom Sensation, you can be playing Storm Rage On. You can put down Ursula, so you can be singing Along Came Zeus and Bare Necessities. And again, especially if you're playing things like A Whole New World, which are giving you fresh hands, and maybe you're chucking some songs. So I think it's alright. I think Chernabog is so much better a lot of the time. Although, that being said, the ability of Chernabog to shuffle those characters back into the deck is good and bad. Like, we see it more often than not in Mufasa decks, so we're usually quite happy to have that happen, because they get back Rapunzels, they get back Mufasas, things like that. And yeah, I think generally most Whole New World decks are not going to be too mad about putting the characters back into their deck. They're getting back Rapunzels, Beasts, all Ariels, all sorts. Yeah, I think Chernabog is probably just better, even though like there are going to be niche situations where you don't want to be shuffling back into your deck, because it can mess with your consistency of your deck. But I still think Chernabog is probably better, and probably the most important thing to mention as why Chernabog is definitely better than this, really, is this has 3 strength, so falls to Medusa. So Kristoff, you are super interesting. You might see some play, but I don't know. I feel like more often than not you would always play Chernabog, even in like a heavy song deck. I feel like you'd play Chernabog over this. Maybe I'm wrong. The 3 strength worries me, but very cool art. Next up, we've got Mirabel Madrigal, Family Gatherer, 5 cost inkable, 5/5. Quests for 5 are very first, and not without my family. You can't play this character unless you have 5 or more characters in play. And this card is also going to be our promo for set 5 set championship season, which is a very very pretty art. So yeah, first of all, 5 lore on a card, first time. She's a big girl. This ability obviously makes this so situational to get on board. I think this is overall. I think this is a terrible card at the moment. In everything outside of some sort of creation involving the peddler, the queen, the 3 cost uninkable from Emerald, who I've been a big fan of since she was first revealed. When Rise of the Floodborn was revealed, she was the first card I did a full video on, and I think it was 5 decks to play her in. But I'm going to give huge credit to Velvet Mumba, who is the man who has absolutely perfected the art of the Peddler Hag. Has had some fantastic placements in really high, top tournaments, including a DLC where he was playing Peddler Hag and Maid Day 2. And if anyone can do it, then he can do it. The problem is she's Emerald, and then if you're playing with this, then you lose purple, you lose Amethyst, who is one of the things who can kind of support her by you exert her and then you can bounce back to your hand and things like that. But yeah, nonetheless, I think that's probably going to be the only sort of place that this card is able to shine. Obviously, there are ways of flooding to the field, lots of low-cost characters, and anything involving Rockstar Stitch. I'm not saying that this is unattainable to get your 5 characters on board, but then you play this, and then you've got to survive the turn. Yes, you're 5/5, so you're out Medusa, but you fall to Zeus. I don't think it's a good card. Something that is a very good card, though, is Daisy Duck, Donald's Date. Adorable. 1 cost uninkable, 1/4, quest for 2, and big prize. Whenever this character quests, each opponent reveals the top card of their deck. If it's a character card, they may put it into their hand. Otherwise, they put it on the bottom of the deck. So obviously, the big negative here is you're giving your opponent a chance to draw a card. If it's a character, they get to keep it. If not, it goes to the bottom of the deck. Most decks are going to have more characters than anything else, other than Steel Song. song, which is going to be a bit more balanced. Still more characters than songs, or then just non-characters. But yeah, don't get me wrong. There are going to be times, because this card will see play, guarantee it. And there are going to be times where you quest with this and they draw and it's the whole new world or the be prepared or the grab swords, whatever, that they really needed, and it's really going to annoy them because it then goes to the bottom of the deck. So that is going to happen occasionally. More often than not, you're giving them a free card, which is not a great thing. But quest, like, this is a one drop that quests for 2, and 4 willpower is asking so much. It's actually in this set that we've gained a couple of really cheap I think it's Simba, who's a 1-cost character that gives a character +2, and I think there's 1 or 2 other cards in this set, like that characters that have built-in plus strength. Don't get me wrong, we've had them in the past. There was like a Megara in chapter 1 format that gives strength, and there are things like Crab. But like, I mean, from right at the beginning, like if you're against this and they're on the play and they play this turn 1, then what do you do? Like, you definitely need a 1-drop, but then most 1-drops are not answering this in one hit. So really it needs to be a 1-drop, and then they quest with this, and then you play your card to give a boost to your 1-drop. There are also items that do this from older sets that don't really see play. But yeah, this is going to be a lot to ask of decks. And if it's good enough, then it's going to force decks to build in a way where they can hit this number like early. Because this is just one heck of an aggro card. But yeah, like I said, it is giving them draw. So yeah, I think this is a really fair card, to be honest, and I do think it will see play in hyper aggro decks, which don't see a ton of play as is. But in that deck, I'm pretty sure it's a sure add. All right, definitely one of the more interesting ones that we'll talk about in this video. We've got Prince Naveen, ukulele player. 4-cost uninkable, 3/3, quest for 2. Sing a 6, and it's beautiful, no. When you play this character, you may play a song with cost 6 or less for free. So, super interesting card. Seems really strong straight off the bat. I'm not as convinced. This is a good card. I'm not about to sell this as being bad by any stretch. I'm not convinced it's as good as sort of like the reactions I saw from the community. I've avoided watching other content creators' card reviews because I haven't done mine yet, and I try not to be too influenced by what others have said. But of course, you know, if you're scrolling Twitter and you're seeing people talk about cards, then you get an idea of people's thoughts about cards. And I'm in a testing group on a Discord where cards are being discussed. But I try my best to not be too swayed by what others are saying, but I'm not sure if this is as good as some people think. That being said, I know that Zach Bivens and Decanter both said that they were a fan of this. I don't know if that's still the case. I think that was just their initial impressions. I remember seeing tweets. But yeah, my point being, obviously, putting this down and immediately being able to go something like grab your swords in certain situations is going to be really strong. I was about to say to deal with Bucky fields, but Bucky's not going to be here for much longer. But anything akin to that, like even just like Emerald Steel is going to start just utilizing Prince John more anyway, and like there's going to be merfolks and things like that, so this could potentially come down on 4 and grab swords a field of like merfolk, Prince John, maybe something else, and that's going to feel really good. If you're doing this to play a whole new world, then it's not necessarily awful. If you're doing it, you probably need to. You probably like don't have a good hand and you just need the refresh. But it's just never as good as a shift into something, sing a whole new world, and then have some ink left to play cards from that new hand. Because if you do this on 4, you play the whole new world, then you're not doing anything, like, then you're ending your turn. Maybe that's still fine, because then, like, they get a turn, then going into your turn, you have a Sing a 6 character on the board, who could sing a Grab Swords, and along came Zeus. Maybe you play out your whole hand, and you play another whole new world, and you're just cycling more and more. So, there are going to be contexts where this card feels really strong. But I don't know if it's ever your preferred turn 4. I think if you're doing it on turn 4, it's like a desperate play. Like, I need to wheel because my hand is awful, or I need to get this Grab Swords down because my opponent's board is getting carried away. And yeah, there are a couple of other targets like Let It Go, Be King Undisputed, even towards the lower end if you're getting a free Friends on the Other Side or something like that. Like, yeah, there are going to be times where this is going to feel okay. I'm not convinced it sees a ton of play, especially being uninkable. Obviously, 3 cost falls to Medusa. If you do it on the play, then you get at least 1 turn before they can get to Medusa anyway. It's all right. It's clearly a strong card. I just don't know if it's good enough. I think if anything, it's a 1 or 2 count. I don't know. I could easily be wrong about this. Maybe wrong's the wrong word because again, I'm not like it's clearly strong. I just don't know how. I'm not convinced it sees as much play as others may think. We'll see, but super interesting. Instant Along Came Zeus is also pretty cool, but you could also just play turn 2 Ursula and then do it on turn 3 or 4, and then still have ink to play with. But yeah, cool card. I say hello there. We have Alana Dale, the Rocking Rooster. Nice to meet you. Thank you. No, here's a little ditty for our Floodborn friends that we call Martin and the Flood. A super iconic character. Robin Hood is so good. If you've never seen Robin Hood, or it's been a while since you've seen Robin Hood, go watch it. Super sweet. Great soundtrack. Really classic opening from this character singing Robin Hood and Little John walking through the forest, laughing back and forth for what the other has to say. It's so charming. But this card is really good. It's a 4-cost inkable 2/3, quest for 2, and fan favourite. Whenever you play a song, gain 1 lore. This is kind of insane. I think this is a sure add to most Steel Song decks. I'm gonna put my flag in the ground there. Not necessarily all Steel Song decks, because they are built slightly differently, and some lean more into like I think a flute build. You definitely play this card because yeah, you're building your deck in a way with lots of singers, loads and loads of songs. The Storm Rages On, the Strength of Raging Fires, the Zeus, the Bare Necessities. Maybe we get to a point where we're going back to things like Be Our Guest just because it's more songs, and the reach this could get you in a turn. Like if you've got an established board, a couple of singers. Put this Alana Dale on the board, sing A Whole New World with one of your singers, whole fresh hand of 7. And if you've got another 2 singers on board, great, here's a couple more songs at my hand. I've still got 5, 6, 7 ink. Okay, here's a couple more. This will end games. I think this is an S tier card, 100%. Next up, we've got our first Wreck-It Ralph. 7-cost uninkable, 6/7. He's a big boy. Of course he is. Quest for 2, and I've got the coolest friend. When you play this character, return a character card from your discard to your hand. If that card is a princess character card, gain 2 lore. Super interesting. So returning from discard is a strong effect. We already have Hades, who has seen play in the past, not so much these days, sometimes in a Mufasa deck. And the Underworld, which has seen play in the Townman Purple, Just in Time Jim Hawkins deck. So its ability that we have on a couple of cards that sees play, it's very strong. Obviously, this is a 7-cost uninkable, so a lot more expensive than Hades. But that ability of if you choose a princess, just gaining 2 lore, could be good enough in a princess deck. Again, this is a fun deck card. I very much doubt this sees meta play, at least not yet. There's going to come a time, you've got to know, where princesses are going to be like a top meta deck. I imagine that will happen for all of these archetypes as the game goes on. So there could absolutely be a time when if princesses is the best deck, or just a deck that's running a lot of princesses can benefit from this bit of reach. Maybe. Obviously, it's uninkable, so it's harder to warrant the inclusion. 6/7 is big. It's going to be hard to remove him outside of a Tremaine, Bee King, or something like a Maleficent, Dragon's Fire, things like that. Targeted removal, my point. But yeah, he's a big boy, questing for 2, putting a card back to your hand. He's okay. He's definitely going to be a good fun addition to the princess deck. But as for meta, not now, maybe in the future. Next up, we've got Maid Marion, 6-cost inkable, 4/5, quest for 2, and when you play this character, chosen opposing character gets -5 strength into the start of your next turn. So yeah, cool ability, obviously synergy with those things we've talked about a lot in the past, Brawl, Medusa, Under the Sea, all those things that care about strength, or just being able to just challenge in with something else you already had on the board. I think this is a bit too expensive, unfortunately. I think there are better ways. If you're just trying to get something into that 2-cost or less range, I think there are other cards that like are -1 or -2 that will get most things into that range. that are songs or just cheaper than this. 4/5 is a respectable stat line, questing for 2, but you wouldn't play it for that, you would play it for the ability, and I think she's just a tad too expensive. Next up we got Zven. Zven Reindeer Steed. This is Frozen, I'm pretty sure. I've not seen Frozen very much, and only the first one. But 4-cost Inkable, 3/3, quest for 2, and Reindeer Games. When you play this character, you may ready chosen character. They can't quest or challenge for the rest of the turn. So I think this is pretty interesting in exactly aggro. This is a pretty cool turn 4 drop. If you're not playing your rabbit, although I've seen a couple of hyper aggro lists that have dropped the rabbits altogether. But yeah, just being able to re-ready your aggro characters. There's also potentially some nice synergy with Arthur, the 3-cost uninkable, that when he quests, you choose a character to return to your hand and you gain 2 lore. So put down a 1-drop 2, like you curve, and then on turn 4, you quest with Arthur, return either the 1 or the 2 drop to your hand. Gain 2 lore, and then you put down this Sven to re-ready the Arthur, and then you can basically do the LeFou loop that people were doing in the past. Unfortunately, Arthur is not the safest choice because of things like brawling format, but the synergy is there if he ever comes back. But even outside of Arthur, just in hyper aggro decks, this could be a pretty cool addition, and questing for 2 and 3/3. Yeah, I think it could see play. Next up, we've got Minnie Mouse, Compassionate Friend, 4-cost Ingable, 1/5, quest for 2, and a small remedy. Whenever this character quests, you may remove up to 2 damage from chosen character. Not the most overwhelming ability, 1/5, quest for 2, but I don't think she's anything too special, not this particular Minnie. However, we also have a new Floodborn that was only revealed very recently in Discord. 5-cost Ingable, 4/4, shift for 4, quest for 2, and parade order. When you play this character, if you used shift to play her, you may search your deck for a character card and reveal that card to all players. Shuffle your deck and put that card on top of it. So we're getting another tutor. We started off with the Madrigal, who searched for a Madrigal and put it on the top of the deck. Then they revealed Merlin in Sapphire, who just puts the card straight into your hand. But now we're getting another. It's to the top, but it is indeed any card. So yeah, this ability is obviously very strong. Doing it on turn 4 is pretty strong. 4/4 is nice. It's out of Medusa range. It does fall to Zeus, but once you've played this card, you've got the value, and you can quest immediately for 2, so or sing something, so that is pretty good. But yeah, being able to put any card to the top of your deck is obviously very strong. Also potential synergy with cards that care about the top card of the deck, like Sorcerer's Hat and Bruno, and there's a couple that I think there's a little bit more support for that in this set, which we'll get to eventually. But yeah, just obviously an incredibly strong ability. So yeah, that previous Minnie Mouse, who is a 4-cost, could be a potential shift target. Unlikely though, because Amber already has a 2-cost Inkable 2/3 and a 2-cost Inkable 1/3 with Singer 3, who would be probably your preferred shift targets. Amber also has the uninkable 5-cost Musketeer Champion, who when she's played, you banish a character with 5 or more strength, who is obviously an interesting card, but normally we want a cheaper character to play our Floodborn. If you're paired with Ruby, then obviously there is a 1-drop Minnie Mouse, a 2-drop, and a 3-drop. So yeah, I think the older 2-cost Inkable minis would be your preferred shift target for the Floodborn. Next up, we've got Try Everything, which I'm also getting is Zootopia. This art is stunning, though. 4-cost Inkable Song. Remove up to 3 damage from chosen character and ready them. They can't quest or challenge for the rest of the turn. So we've got, in this set, and pretty much every set, loads of these like action songs or items that remove 1 to 3 damage. So yeah, the fact that this one is a song in a lot of situations is going to be better because you can sing it, but that being said, depending on your build, you might prefer to have an item version or an action version. But generally speaking, songs are very, very strong. Yeah, it's nothing particularly fascinating, but in decks like Grandpappy, which don't see play anymore, but you never know when that's going to come back into fashion, or just other cards in the future that have similar effects where they can draw you cards or gain lore just by removing damage counters. You just never know when something like this is going to have synergy, but as for now, nothing too special. Next up, we've got Healing Touch, 3-cost inkable action, remove up to 4 damage and draw a card. So, like I just said, if there's ever synergy for removing damage and we would prefer to use an action, then maybe this is the way we go. This also does draw a card, so that's definitely something that makes this slightly better. But other than that, not too much to say. Oh, other than great art and a shout out to the Illumateers for the reveal of this and Liam dressing up as Grandpuppy. Good fun. Next up, we've got Revive, 5-cost uninkable action. Play a character card with cost 5 or less from your discard for free. So, we've got our first kind of Monster Reborn-esque card. I don't think this is very good at all. Now, obviously, I've seen some talk about this going with Mufasa. There's just being extra copies of Mufasa, but it's only extra copies of Mufasa if you have been through one. Which isn't a unrealistic board state to achieve, but you draw this early, you're pretty much dead in the water with it. Yeah, getting back Mufasa could be cool, or even if you're paired with Ruby, maybe getting back a Maui. I actually think getting back Maui will be relevant for this card before Mufasa. Maybe that's wrong, just because I think a lot of people will chuck this into Mufasa decks, and you throw enough at the wall, then something's going to hit. Yeah, I don't think this is great overall. It's one of these things where, like you say, like I mentioned, Mufasa is one of the big targets for this that people talk about, and I actually think Maui's a really good one. If you're doing this with something that has a come into play ability, then maybe it's better. But again, it's an uninkable. 5 is expensive, and again, it's fair. But I'm not looking cards for cards that are fair. I'm looking for cards that are overpowered and going to win me the game. And I think this is just a little bit meh, unfortunately. So Ali turns out to be merely Aladdin. Read my lips and come to grips with reality. Now face a blast from your past, whose lies were too good to last. Say hello to your precious Prince Ali. I absolutely love that song. The Prince Ali reprise sung by Jafar. It's his only song in the first Aladdin. Although shout out to Return of Jafar, Aladdin 2, which is underrated. And he gets the song You're Only Second Rate, which I'm hoping comes to Lorcana one day. So I'm going to put my fork in the my flag in the ground, a fork in the sand, whatever. I think this is one of the best cards that have been revealed in the set so far. Not necessarily right now, although maybe right now. 6-cost uninkable song. Name a card. Return all character cards with that name from your discard to your hand. So it has been well established that this is just the main name of the card. Like there is Maleficent Sorceress and there's Maleficent Biding Her Time, and this goes on for most characters at this point. We have multiple sub-names. But we have come to learn from things like Bruno that you just need to say Magic Broom or Maleficent or whatever it might be, and that is good enough. So that means, like, I took Maleficent as an example there, or Magic Broom, that you're returning potentially loads of cards to your hand. I think the only thing that could make this potentially relevant now, and again, potentially, because this means you're playing Amethyst Amber, which isn't the strongest deck in combination at this point in time, outside of maybe Hyper Aggro, but again, even that's not been performing too great as of late. But imagine playing this and saying Merlin and getting back your goats, your rabbits. Like that alone sounds kind of mad. Like even if you get back 2 goats, two rabbits with this, and if it's close to the end of the game, like you have a Medusa. Well, Medusa can't sing it because if you can't play red as well as purple and yellow maker. But if you've got if you've got something that can sing this, and you do so, you've got 8 ink. Get back a couple of goats. Like I think this is. I think Merlin is the one that gives this the most legs right now. But in the future, I think this just gets better and better. Like, and you've got to think we get to a point where there are going to be more decks that can actually run, not tribal, but like a film. I suppose maybe that is tribal. But the idea being that they're playing like 12 Aladdins and then 10 Jafars and 4 Genies, and this works. And then potentially this could be returning a load of cards to our hand. Don't get me wrong, if you're playing this on turn 6, odds are there's not going to be loads in the discard that all have the same name, maybe 2 or 3 at most. But over longer games, this just gets better and better. Again, maybe I'm overhyping it a little bit, because again, if it's only really getting full value if it's a long game, then how strong is... I think with Merlin, it could be really good. And again, in the future, you never know what other broken cards we're going to get that just, oh, you're saying that I can have extra copies of Merlin Goat or whatever it is that comes out. I think this has really got some legs. Right now, maybe not. I think that, again, the synergy with Merlin is cool, but Amethyst Amber isn't a great ink pairing. But potentially, we could make it work. But I do think this card has legs for the future, and I adore the artwork. Next up, we have Invited to the Ball. 2-cost uninkable action. Reveal the top 2 cards of your deck. Put revealed character cards into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So, interesting one. A potential +1. And just thinning of the deck, which is pretty cool. Aggro could potentially benefit from this, which will more often than not play pretty much all character cards, but bar maybe a couple like Friends or sometimes Befuddles. Anything similar to Mufasa that isn't playing a lot of non-character cards could potentially benefit from this. On turn 2, it's probably slow in this meta, with things like Flynn Rider going around. But later on in the game, it could be okay. It's alright. It might see some play in a couple of decks. I'm not convinced it sees play in Mufasa. It's an alright card, but I don't think it's something you prioritize. I think you just put all your eggs in your Rapunzel and Silver Stitch and maybe even Pongo baskets. Interesting card. Maybe sees some niche play, but probably not much beyond that. Next up, Healing Decanter, 2-cost inkable item. Exert, remove up to 2 damage from chosen character. Another one of these small healing cards. So again, if there's ever synergy with Grandpuppy or anything similar to Grandpuppy, and you would prefer to have an item, which means you can do this every turn, then this is probably your go-to. I would say just the fact that it's an item, you can use the effect every turn. This is probably one of the more powerful ones without even looking through all the minor healing ability cards we've had over the last couple of sets. This strike stands out as probably being one of the better ones. Next up, Queen's Censor Core. Super cool artwork, and I love the theming of this card. 2-cost inkable item. We have a Symbol of Nobility. At the start of your turn, if you have a princess or queen character in play, gain 1 lore, and Royal Search. Exert and pay 2. Reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a princess or queen, you can put it into your hand. Otherwise, put it on top of your deck. So the ability is cool. The first part of the ability, the Symbol of Nobility, is cool. In Amber, obviously, you immediately compare other ways of gaining passive lore outside of locations like Pride Lands. Flute is the first one that comes to mind, but obviously that's dependent on you playing a song. But this is dependent on you having a princess or queen on the board. But if you build your deck in the right way, assumedly that's going to be a lot of the time. Also, this is inkable, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, just having the option to have this Royal Search to just pay 2 at any point and look at the top card of your deck, and if it's a princess or queen, you add it to your hand, is not terrible by any means. Let's put it this way. The princess deck, if it's amber is one of its colours, which I'm 99% sure most of the good princesses are in amber, I think there are good odds that you find room for this. Again, it's still more on the fun deck side for now. I don't think this is finding its way into consistent top cut decks. Maybe a rogue here or there, you never know. But yeah, a good support card for a fun archetype, which again, I say fun. Over time, queens, kings, princesses, villains, they'll all have their moment in the meta. Next up, the Amber Chromacon, 2-cost inkable. Amber Light, exert, remove up to 1 damage from each of your characters. So I just could mention the other item that is 2 damage from 1. So this is another one that seems like one of the better ones if you have a deck that synergizes well by removing damage with things like Grandpappy. Again, that's the only card really we have that's decent for that has that benefits from you healing damage. I think it's whenever you heal damage, you gain 2 or 3 lore. But if we get more things like that in the future, who knows? And again, this is cheap, it's inkable, and you can use it every turn. So maybe in the future, it could see play. Next up, we have a location, Rapunzel's Tower, Secluded Prison, 2-cost inkable, 1/8, 1 to move their 8 willpower, and Safe and Sound, characters get +3 willpower while here. I think this is pretty good. I think this is one of our better locations. This art is stunning, by the way. Only 1 to move there is absolutely life-saving for it. And yeah, 8 is this is a big location, and yeah, that +3 to willpower is really going to mess up maths from a meta that has so many of these cards like Storm Rage on, Tinkerbell, Grab Swords, just these cards that do this ping, and even just in basic challenges, you're now surviving something you wouldn't have ordinarily. You're getting an extra quest off, you're getting an extra challenge off. So yeah, like I don't think, oh yeah, this immediately jumps into any Amber deck, but there is definitely a deck out there that I think could benefit from this. It's one of our better locations, so yeah, I'd love to see it. And now we have Pride Lands Jungle Oasis. 3 cost inkable, 2 to move there, 8 willpower, 1 passive lore gain. And while you have 3 or more characters here, you may banish this location to play a character from your discard for free. So any character from your discard is obviously super strong. Like the sky's the limit depending on your in combination. You think if you're paired with Ruby, then the likes of Maleficent, Monstrous Dragon. But yeah, 3 characters here, and it's 2 to move there. That's super expensive. Maybe there's some synergy with something like Tuk Tuk. I mean, like Jim Hawkins can obviously rush this in and move there, so that's one of your characters. And maybe we can Tuk Tuk to get others there. I don't think this is great right now. I think as time goes on, and we get more decent ways of moving characters to locations cheaper. And don't get me wrong, I know there's other things like Map of Treasure Planet, where it's a reduced cost to move things. And hey, maybe this is the location that makes that playable. I'm not convinced right away, but as we get more and more, there's going to be eventually something which we're playing it because it's good for another reason, but it also lowers the cost of moving to locations, and then maybe this becomes a little bit easier to get online. I do think it's probably mostly better in the late part of the game, though, obviously, because if you want to get something, if you're getting something from your discard, you want it to be of a high cost. It's certainly an interesting one. It's a powerful ability. At the moment, I don't think you're going to get it off consistently enough, but one to look out for in the future, I think, for sure. And now the last couple, courtesy of the Discord, we already looked at the Minnie Mouse. We're getting a new Moana Determined Explorer. This artwork is beautiful. 3 cost uninkable, 3/4 quest for 2. Yeah, 3/4 stat line questing for 2 on a 3 cost is really good, but being uninkable, I think, absolutely kills her in the water. Other than, you know, shift potential, obviously being a princess, maybe she makes her way into a princess deck if there's enough extra synergy there. At the moment, I think just the being uninkable just kills her off. Because otherwise, this is quite an interesting card. Like, 3 cost, 3/4 quest for 2 is a nice stat line. But yeah, I just don't think it's worth the uninkable spot. And the last 2, we have Nala, Mischievous Cub. Love it. 1 cost inkable, 0/4 quest for 1. The Lorcana Hide and Seek Championship was hers for the taking. Love it. Super cute. Yeah. It's a shift target for something in the future. 0/4 doesn't astound me. Again, 4 is hard to hit early, but you're only questing for 1. I don't think it's doing enough necessarily, but one day I'll make a great shift target. And our final card, we have Lilo, Junior Cake Decorator. 2 cost inkable, 1/3, quest for 1, and support. Nothing to shout about here, but one day this could be a perfectly fine shift target. Of course, in Amber, there's also the Making a Wish Lilo, the 1 cost inkable quest for 2, which could be your shift target, but if you want more copies, or you just aren't an aggro deck and you just prefer inkable options, then maybe this is the way you go. So yeah, that is all the Amber cards. Overall, nothing absolutely meta-breaking. I think there's a couple of cards that like definitely could get better in the future. I think Pride Lands, like when a day comes that we can move characters cheaper and we have more ways of doing it. This is something that could be good one day. I think Rapunzel's Tower has some potential right now. Blast from Your Past, again, there's a fun deck there with Merlin where this could be cool. Realistically, it's probably not good enough yet, but I do think it's a bit slept on. I think in the future this could get better and better and better. Yeah, the Vanellope, the Floodborn one, I think she's just outshined by the Queen, but it's going to make a good addition to a fun deck. Alana Dale, I think, is an absolutely S tier card. I think probably the best card that we've looked at in all of these Amber cards. The Fix It Felix, again, the 2 cost has got a cool effect, and the Floodborn giving +2 to your locations. probably still not good enough right now, but good for a fun deck, and in the future, depending on what sort of location-based decks end up being more meta, he could absolutely be a good addition. Kristoff's okay. Again, I think the Chernobog is probably better more often than not. And of course, this Prince Naveen is certainly something that will certainly see a lot of test play. I'm just not convinced that, by the time we get to halfway through set 5 meta, I'm not convinced at the moment that he's necessarily an assured add. Maybe he's a 1-off or a 2-off in some decks. We'll see. I think that Alana Dale is the absolute S-tier card of the Amber reveals. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. But yeah, it's been actually quite nice to go through this entire set, seeing everything that's been revealed, so knowing our Floodborn targets and things like that. But yeah, this has been the first one. We put out a poll, so for you guys to choose what order we'll be doing these card reviews. But you can only do 4 options at a time on YouTube polls. So I just put Ruby, Amber, Amethyst, and Sapphire. Amber was the winner, so well, at the time of when I got around to recording, Amber was in the lead, so it's that we're doing first. And at the moment, it's looking like Sapphire is going to be the next one that we do. And then I will put out another poll adding Steel and Emerald, so you guys can decide what order you want these revealed in. I'm going to try and get us through as many of them as I can during this week. And of course, I want to do the final set championships video. And then, yeah, I'm casting in Italy over the weekend. And let me know if you're going to be there. And I'll be walking around the hall. If you see me at any point, do please always feel free to stop me to say hello. If I'm ever busy, I will say, I'm really sorry, I'm doing XYZ, but I'll meet you in 5 minutes, in an hour. This time, I'll always try and make the time to speak to people. Anyone that wants something signed. I've got Villain Club cases that I was giving away in Germany. But yeah, I'm super excited to go to Italy, and yeah, I'm excited to get through the rest of these card reviews. But that's it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you're brand new to the channel, please subscribe for all things Lorcana. Hit that like button to show support, and we'll see you soon.